Today I'd like to introduce our presenters, Scott Hottenstein and Stephanie Vanos. And I was going to go into a bigger spiel than that, but they do that for themselves. So I'm going to hand this over to Scott and Stephanie. Welcome, please.
We've got one mic and there's two of us. Can you hear me with my Navy, my teacher voice?
This might be better for me.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Scott Hottenstein. I am the president of the Democratic Public Education Caucus of Florida. That never rolls off the tongue, but yeah. So just a little bit about myself. You probably, some of you might have heard from both of us at the big Democratic Club meeting, but I grew up in Florida. I was actually born in the Bronx. Left Florida again, 17, went to the Naval Academy, served 24 years in the Navy, had command, did deployments to sandy places and hot places, that kind of thing. When I retired, we moved to the Tampa area, Hillsborough County, and I became a middle school civics teacher. And in 2019, I was a Teacher of the Year finalist in Hillsborough, so I was top 5 out of about 15,000 teachers. That's like more applause just in the intro than we normally get. I'm a little thrown off now. You're gonna, yeah. I've spent too much time in Tallahassee battling Republicans where it's like, you're gonna overwhelm me. I ran for school board in 2018 in Hillsborough County. Had 2 former students manage my campaign. One was a sophomore, the other was a senior in high school. Got 29,000 votes, but finished just out of the runoff. Learned that a lot of the problems are in Tallahassee, ran for state rep in a heavily Republican area. I lost, but did better than just about any other Democrat running in the state in 2020. I was elected president of this caucus in June of 21. It's kind of my full-time thing. I substitute teach part-time, but kind of my full-time gig is going around and meeting great Democrats all across the state and going up to Tallahassee and meeting some not-so-great Republicans. So, yeah, so thank you for having me. I'll toss it over to Steph.
I'm Stephanie Vanos. Just a little bit about me. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, and my mom was a public school teacher. My dad actually went to public school in Miami-Dade County, and public school really changed his life. He grew up in an unstable just family and the precarious financial situation, so I grew up learning that public school was really the way to change the trajectory of your life. So I went to public school K through 12. I went to Northwestern for undergrad and then went to law school at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Made my way to Orlando where I practiced law at a large law firm for several years. When my second daughter was born, I had the opportunity to stay home, and so I took it. I now have 3 daughters that are all in public school in Orange County, 1 elementary, 1 in middle, and 1 in high school. And I've really just been involved in public education advocacy since my daughter started kindergarten 10 years ago. I've been a member of the League of Women Voters of Orange County since 2016, and thank you. And just rolled off chairing the education committee up there in Orange County for 2 years, but still super involved. And yeah, I joined the caucus about a year ago, was elected to vice president over the summer, and I'm also the chair of our political committee, HOPE, which is all about public education.
You notice when you said 3 daughters, 1 in elementary, middle, like everyone started clapping and then they're like, oh, you know, it's more a wave of sympathy, I think. You want to click? We're normally on different sides. So, what is the Democratic Public Education Caucus? We were founded in 2019 to advocate for public education. We go on the road. We've been, I don't know how many different places. And normally the first thing people say is, I didn't know we had a public education caucus, which is why we spend a lot of time away from our families meeting Democratic groups, because you got to know that we exist. Of course, being founded in 2019, COVID really had a negative impact. Like right as we were having our first in-person conference, COVID came in, shut it down, and it was hard to advocate for pro-public education policies or candidates in 2020. Like I said before, I was elected in 21, so we've been working on expanding the caucus and just getting up to Tallahassee, getting to school board meetings, being pro-public education. And in the 22 cycle, we did a lot of work helping school board candidates and a couple of state rep candidates all across the state. Yeah, and
so one thing that we've realized as we're advocating for pro-public education policies is that you can talk about policy all you want, but unless you elect better people who share your values, it doesn't really matter, they're never going to change. And so this summer, as we were talking to school board candidates across the state, we were just really struck by how many of the same issues and concerns they were running into. They didn't feel supported by their party. They didn't have enough funds. Their volunteers weren't trained. They weren't trained. Sometimes we were, 4 weeks away from the election, and they were learning how to send texts, and they were still trying to figure out their budget. And so we formed the political committee so that we could help to incubate these school board candidates across the state, just get them early money, get them early training, so that they're on a more, I don't want to say level playing field, because one side definitely outspends our side, but at least get them up to speed and be able to better compete in the reality that is today. And we also found that our caucus, just due to electioneering laws, was not able to spend more than $500 a year on electioneering, which was another reason that we had to start the political committee. And in addition to helping school board candidates in their campaigns, we also want to work on targeting NPA voters who are pro-public education, and then helping just voters in smaller areas as well, some smaller counties. So that's what we're doing. So some current events in Florida public education. I guess we're limited on time, so we'll try to be kind of quick on this overview. The thing we're really going to talk about today is actually the first thing, which is House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 202, and that's the Educational Savings Account and Voucher Expansion Bill. It's really just about privatizing public education.
Other things going on, and someone beforehand said, yeah, we heard you talk, I think we were last year in the Villages in December. Like, so are you going to have a repeat? And I'm like, no, we live in Florida, we get new material every day. So like the polarization, that was constant, and that's what we talked about, but how it's playing out. So New College down in Sarasota, just decapitated by the governor. I was at a protest down there a couple of weeks ago. They installed Chris Rufo. They brought in Richard Corcoran and paid him twice the amount of money to be the interim president. He doesn't even have a doctor in front of his name. But so New College, that's new. Removing school board members. The governor in Broward County, there's a gentleman who got elected, but he had a prior felony conviction. But he had done his term, and his voting rights had been restored, but his right to run for office, there is another piece of paperwork. So he filed it. Well, guess who approves it? The governor. So the governor waited, didn't approve it, and then 30 days after the election, there's a law that says, well, if you can't take your seat after you get elected 30 days, then the governor can remove that person and appoint someone else. So that's what he did. A lot of the Moms for Liberty type school board members, as soon as they took office, like 45 minutes later, they get sworn in, 45 minutes later, they're firing the superintendent. We could go on and on and on, but we're not focusing on this. But the dysfunction in public education, make no mistake, that's part of the plan. And that's what they're sowing with this polarization.
And then I think everyone's familiar with just the attacks on academic freedom in our schools, the rejection of the AP African American Studies course, and then the later correspondence that came out showing that the governor's office and the Department of Education had no idea or understanding what the course was even about, and this was just all a huge political move. And then, of course, book bans. You know, my daughter, my 5th grader, her teacher was told she had to scan every single book in her classroom in order to comply with the new laws. And because the scanning device wasn't able to pick up the information from every book, she ended up having to get rid of over half the books in her classroom. Not because they were problematic, just because the scanner wouldn't work. So there were teachers in her elementary school that were just like throwing away books because they could not get them to scan. So that's where we're at.
In Duval County, they banned books on Hank Aaron and Roberto Clemente because the book talked about how they had to overcome discrimination like that. Underfunded public education system. This just happened yesterday. I won't give you the whole itinerary, but I was on my way home to Tampa from Tallahassee, and I stopped in Gainesville and had lunch with a former student of mine who's up at UF. And so we were driving to where we're gonna go eat, and we're catching each other up, and like, yeah, I was in Tallahassee, and we're doing this, and this is what's going on with HB1, and like my student, unprompted, was like, Mr. H, why don't they just fund public education? And we're 48th in funded. And all of the problems and leading to the dysfunction is because we underfund public education.
As students without teachers and counselors, again, I think 9 out of 10 students are experiencing this in their schools right now. And I can tell you at our school, all 3 of my daughter's schools, all 3 of our principals left at the end of last year, and they're no longer working in schools anymore. All of my middle school guidance counselors left. My daughter's counselor this year quit. So it's not just teachers, but it's throughout the whole school, just because of the climate and pay and just the whole thing.
And what's amazing is the testing system got 3 times worse this year, and no one's talking about it because of all this other crap that's coming out of the governor's office. So we still have issues with testing in Florida.
Okay, so this is the main topic of the day. HB1 and SB 202, so House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 202, those are the universal vouchers, educational savings account bills. They are bad bills. First of all, just to set the stage, over 85% of Florida students go to Florida public schools. So that's where most parents choose to send their children. Universal vouchers, what that means is that under these bills, any child who's eligible to go to school, kindergarten through 12th grade, has access to get a voucher if this bill passes. Which means they're using their funding that would normally go to their public school, and they can use that money to go to a private school. Or if it goes into an educational savings account, they can use it for homeschooling, they can use it for supplies or tutoring that the parents think they need. And so that's money that's taken out of our public school system and given to religious private schools, or for items that the parent thinks the child needs, or for a homeschooling program that really has no standards in our state. The main thing to remember about these bills are it diverts public funds to private entities that don't have transparency. So we don't really know what they're doing with the money, the standards aren't the same, there's really no way to track what is happening with our public taxpayer funds. And it's expected that it will cost an additional $3 billion, at least $3 billion just next year to fund this. The other part of it is it fails to improve outcomes. Voucher schools, kids who go to voucher schools have worse outcomes than kids who stay in public schools. So not only can we not track this money, but the students who it's supposed to be helping does not improve their outcomes. 61% of students who go to voucher schools come back to their public school within 2 years, and when they come back, they're a year behind. And then public school teachers have to help those students get back up to speed, even though they're under-resourced. I think what really bothers me about this bill is it's marketed as a bill that is helping special needs and low-income students and providing choice. But if, special needs students, just like, students without special needs, 85% go to public schools. So if you really cared about special needs students, you would invest money in the public school system, make sure that you have enough parents, you have enough resources. If you need special schools to address certain issues, then let's invest that in the public school system rather than outsource it to private groups who we don't really know what they're doing. Low-income students. This is also targeted as to helping low-income students in their quote-unquote failing schools. Well, if the schools are failing, why aren't we figuring out why they're failing? And why aren't we giving them, again, the resources they need to turn those schools around? And why are we making low-income students leave their neighborhoods to go to a voucher school that's maybe in their neighborhood, maybe in a strip mall 10 miles away? And then the third thing is, this is kind of marketed as giving parents choices. But there are plenty of choices in the public school system. There are very popular magnet schools, there's IB programs, all those sorts of things that really there's usually wait lists to get into those programs. And again, even when you're in those programs, they don't have enough money to really build up and provide the choice, yet they all have better track records than voucher schools. So if we really want to give parents more choices, we would build up the choice options within the public school rather than diverting it to private schools. And then the last fact down there, our neighborhood schools, they're all underfunded. Florida ranks 48th in public education funding, and the funding for our schools is down 17.5% since 2007.
Just a note on that, the governor put out his budget, and it's calling for a 2.5% increase to the base student allocation. So everyone's celebrating, hey, we're giving a pay raise to teachers. Well, what was inflation in the past year? So a 2.5% raise is really like a, 4% pay cut? But anyway. So with this educational savings account or vouchers, they're doing this in Arizona right now as we speak. They passed their version of the bill, and they thought, this will be good, it'll help some kids get to better schools. They're looking at it, their budget has ballooned, and 80% of the money is going to families that already were paying to send their kids to private schools. So only 20% of the money is going to kids who are leaving public schools in search of a better choice. So really, we're paying for there was a question at the first committee stop, HB1, they're like, can we cap this at $1 million? Can we say if you earn more than $1 million a year? And they're like, no. So we're literally paying to send millionaires' kids to private school. But here's the thing, and I don't know what it is here in Sumter. I know you've got the charter school, but in Hillsborough County, we have some pretty elite private schools, Tampa Prep, Jesuit. If you're a parent and your kid is in a struggling school, what's in your imagination is, I wish I could send my kid to Tampa Prep. And then along comes this voucher bill, and they're like, we're going to give you choice. We're going to give you money. Well, here's the thing. The amount of the voucher, about $8,500, that's not going to put a dent into Tampa Prep's $35 grand a year tuition. You still can't afford that. So the schools that you can afford are horribly low quality. We ran some stats. So the Florida DOE has a website that you can download a spreadsheet. 3,097 private schools in Florida. Of those 3,097, 2,311 take vouchers. Of those 2,311, 1,600 of them are unaccredited. 7 out of 10 voucher schools in Florida have no oversight over their academic program. And these are the schools that low-income families can afford with that voucher. There are strip malls. There's no qualified teachers. You get a workbook. And then eventually you realize, the parents of the student, like, this is horrible. And you come back to public school, and Stephanie told you the stats. 61% come back within 2 years, and they're a year behind. This is why. In that spreadsheet, it gives you the data. Roughly one third of the voucher schools in Florida say that they are for profit. They explicitly say that we exist to make money. 58% of them are religious schools. Now, I went to 14 years of religious private school growing up in Palm Beach County. So, and I got excellent education, but my parents didn't get a nickel, and I looked them up. The school I graduated from doesn't take vouchers nowadays, and the school I went from JK through 8th, you still can't afford it. So 3,097 schools. If you're a family who wants to go to a voucher school that's nonprofit, non-religious, and accredited, that number goes from 3,097 to 63. Only 3% of the schools in Florida, private schools, accept vouchers, nonprofit, non-religious, accredited. And we haven't done all the legwork, but you probably can't afford those schools, even with the voucher. So it's an illusion of choice that the Republicans are selling, but parents are buying it because they don't understand the quality of the schools that are available to them.
Although most parents are not buying it, because 85% still go to public school.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that we're working on, so there's all this terrible stuff coming out of Tallahassee, but our political committee is really focused on helping the school board races. And you might be asking, well, why are we looking at school board races? They're so far down the ballot. And the reality is that school boards protect our children and our students, and we're people who care about our children and our public schools. They're really the first line of defense from the horribleness that's coming out of Tallahassee. So if we can have our strong school boards that share our values, we can help to at least, protect some of the horribleness that's coming out of Tallahassee. We say public education today is our economy tomorrow, and our school board members really play a critical role in protecting our kids and our schools. And the second reason that we care about the school board races is because we want to build a bench of pro-public education candidates. You know, your school board member today might be your state rep or your state senator tomorrow. And so by investing in these local races and making sure that the people who, again, are supporting our pro-public education, which is really the foundation of our democracy, that we're supporting them and helping to build them up. And then the last reason is there is an association in Florida called the Florida School Board Association, or the FSBA, and every school board member in each of the 67 counties is a member of the FSBA. And the FSBA matters because it frames public education conversations in our state, it guides district policy decisions, and it advocates for policy positions in Tallahassee. And so if we can make sure that the members on the FSBA are members that agree and support, academic freedom, and they, don't want to overtest our kids, and they want to make sure we have high quality teachers that stay in schools. So we want to make sure that those school board members are the people who are making up the Florida School Board Association.
Okay. So what do we want to do for 24? We got to win. We got to compete in some of these races. Statewide, there's about 425 school board members across the state. They all have 4-year terms. They're staggered. So there's about 200-something elections every 2 years. Well, we might have only had 80 Democrats running for school board in 22. So over half of the races weren't contested. And then, so Republicans dominate that SBA. So what do we want to do? We got to fundraise early. The other side has a huge fundraising advantage. We need money. We're never going to match them. We're never going to come close to matching them. But we need to have funds available for our school board members. And so part of that is us going around in 23, or even our first visit was to the villages in December of 22. We knew we had to start right after the 22 election to get ready for 24. Why? Because we have to recruit these school board members. And that's a tough sell nowadays, right?
Yes.
How many of you, yeah, hey, I want to get yelled at. I want to, you know, there are all sorts of awful things that happen. But we need to convince people to get in the race early, because then they could fundraise for themselves, and then they could start reaching the voters, because we really have to persuade the voters. That's what we didn't do in 22, that's what we need to do. And it takes money. Everywhere we went, the candidates, first thing was money, and we're like, hey, actually state law, we can't give you money. Then the next thing was, we need volunteers. So I'm an acronym guy from my time in the Navy. So like, we need a cool acronym. So I'm like, Specialized Public Education Canvassing Team, Ready, Engaged. If you have that, you got Spectre. And who doesn't want to be part of Spectre? And like, you're going after James Bond or something. So you know, this isn't going to be for everyone, but we want like a core group of maybe 40 people around Florida who, when the time comes in 24, and we say, hey, we've got a candidate, we're putting money against them, we've endorsed them as the caucus, let's get together, let's get 20 people, and let's go to Orange County and knock doors for a weekend for that person, or even for a day. You know, people who are highly motivated who do this, going around and engaging the voters. The sooner the better. NPA voters. August is when a lot of school board races are decided. But what voters hear when it's August, they hear it's a primary election. And NPA voters think, I can't vote in primary elections because I'm no party affiliation. And what they forget is you can vote for school board, you can vote for judges, you can vote for if there's referendums. So we got to reach out to the NPA voters and make sure that they turn out to the polls. And we also want to identify who are public education voters. There are 4 million NPA registered voters in Florida. So what we would like to do is a texting campaign. I know some of you probably did some texting campaigns during the last cycle, but if a text is 2 cents to send the first text, if you do the math, I'm a civics teacher, but if you do the math, 4 million NPA voters, 2 cents a text, it's $80,000 for that first text to go out. So again, that's another reason why we're fundraising. We actually have a national partner who wants to work with us on this, but we got to get the money to get into the system and start sending the text messages.
By the way, we're talking about canvassers going door to door. I've heard that there's a group of people from the villages who come to Orange County before to canvass, so you should seriously consider Spectre. Okay, so home consistent, winning, poll tested public education messaging. I think we can probably all agree that our side has a difficult time sometimes coming up with concise messaging that appeals to people and that's easy to understand. Part of it is because we understand what's going on and we could get into the weeds on any given policy issue because it's interesting and we want to explain the whys. But messaging is something that the caucus side of what we do has been really focused on this past year. But really just as a state and as a party, we need to make sure that we're all on the same page. And it was a struggle this year. The Florida Democratic Party did some surveys and some questions and some polling early last year. but they did not reveal the results of all of that until July. And if you remember, our school board races are in August. So we need to get that information earlier. Okay, engage in small counties with Democratic voter registration advantage. So there are quite a few counties, I think we identified 5 or 6 in North Florida, where there's actually more Democrats registered than Republicans. But their school boards are red. But that's a prime area where we think we can flip those school boards with just a little bit of investment. I think it was in Jefferson County, in this last school board election, the person who won, the school board member who won, had something like, I'm gonna get the exact numbers off, but something like 460 votes compared to 307. So if we can turn out 200 more voters, we can start to flip school boards, we can start to change the FSBA, we can start to change the conversation about public education in Florida. Educate elected Democrats on public education issues, and that's something that we work on really all year, but right now as we've been up to Tallahassee, just talking to the current elected both school board members really, and also state representatives. They don't always understand the intricacies of a voucher school and a charter school, what's a magnet school, how does that play in, which is public, which is private, how does all that work? And that's an important part of really developing our messaging too, is just making sure that our elected officials really understand what is happening in public education and public schools. Educate Dems and MPs on timing and importance of school board races. Scott really touched on this, but just making sure that people understand that MPs can vote in August, and we need them to vote in August. And if we have better turnout and we can pull out those pro-public education MPAs, we can win school board elections in August. The school board member needs to get 50% of the vote plus 1. We can do that if we have better turnout of people who will vote for pro-public education candidates. And then the last two kind of go together, and it's just about protecting our candidates and volunteers from intimidation. You know, we mentioned, Scott mentioned that all of the school board candidates and a lot of the state reps that we talked to lacked volunteers that were willing to go door to door for them. And honestly, in the political climate of the past year, I don't blame people for being scared for, you know, knocking on a door and not really, especially if you don't have the best data system, you know, not really knowing who's answering that door and what they're gonna scream or yell at you. I mean, we experienced that, just the two of us out canvassing. And we just want to make sure that we have good data information, first of all, that our volunteers have, and then also that our candidates know that we will stand behind them and that we will support them and just won't let them, you know, wither out there in the wind. And part of that also is conducting opposition research. There were some, oh my gosh, there were some candidates out there who, you know, lied on their application to apply for schools and, you know, were cheated on tests and were elected. And we're not doing a great job of supporting your candidates in that way by just kind of giving them that oppositional research.
Okay, so what can you do? Y'all are already super engaged. You can volunteer. We've been setting up chapters in areas of our caucus, but if you're involved in like Democratic internal politics, the amount of paperwork that goes into setting up an official chapter with bank accounts and all that, it's a big hurdle. So we're starting to talk about local action networks, and that's just people who are informed about public education and getting the word out. And actually, you kind of have it. You already have like I think Lake County School Board meeting schedule there. People just showing up to school board meetings provides some moral support for the members who want to choose to vote for pro-public education policies. You could join a local campaign. I don't think there were any Democrats who ran for school board in this area in 22. Maybe we could find someone, and with a little bit of help, our help, your help, maybe we find someone to run in 24, even if it's just to get the message out. And you could join our roving band of Spectre canvassers. And if you have time to devote, come join us and knock doors elsewhere as well.
and then show up. Scott mentioned, attend school board meetings. You're all doing a great job of that. Meeting with your legislator at home. This next week, I take that back. Well, this next week is the last week that legislators will be up in Tallahassee. Then they'll be home for a week before session starts. So that week, that sort of ends February, beginning of March. Great time to meet with your legislator and share your concerns. And even better if you have a Republican legislator, like let them know that that you're a constituent and that you don't support these bills and that you vote too and your neighbor votes and you're involved and you're gonna spread the word about what's really happening. I really think a lot of times they're just convinced that people aren't paying attention and they can get away with whatever they want to do. So we need to let them know that we are paying attention and we're gonna make sure our neighbors and friends are paying attention too. And then again, write letters to the editor, posts on social media, all of those things. Again, it's just that public information campaign is a big part of it, and it is important to have those letters in the newspaper and writing emails to legislators and any posts on social media you can do as well. Or you can, another option is you can run for office. Let us know, we're happy to help. If you know someone who might be interested in running for office, especially for a school board, we can help. That's what we're here for. And then finally, donate to Hope. Again, we are taking all of our donations into the political committee rather than the caucus, just because we're so limited on what we can spend on in the caucus. But by donating to Hope, you help us identify those NPA voters, and you help us incubate those school board candidates and start to change things here in Florida for public education.
So how many of you have a smartphone and you can aim it at there? So do that. How many of you have no clue how a smartphone works and how to get to it? Raise your hand if you have no clue. Okay? So keep those hands raised. You don't know how. No, keep them raised.
Be careful, he's a teacher.
If you don't know how, now then take your hand and pull out your wallet. If you would like to donate by check, you can make it out to Hope. We actually do business at the bank under Hope or help out public education. We can give you a mailing address if you need one. Envelopes, you see how candidates have envelopes? Those are crazy expensive. I don't know what happened. This is horse country, right? Maybe there's a shortage of horses to make the glue for the envelopes. I don't know, but envelopes are super expensive. But if you want to mail a check, we'll give you the address to mail it to, or you could donate via the QR code or the link, and we'll share that with Pat. And if you have a newsletter, maybe you can put it out that way. So this one's free. Who likes free things? We have a weekly newsletter. It normally goes out Tuesdays, sometimes when I'm on the road. This past week, it went out Thursday. And in that newsletter, we cover kind of current events. We talk about the bills. We have calls to action. So we have a link to a page that gives you sample letters to the editor that you could copy and submit to your local paper. We talk about messaging every week. We give you messaging slides, and these are they're like little quotes. So you could click on it, if someone's talking about, hey, I don't even have kids in school or even grandkids. Why do I care? We actually have a quote that you could use. And this is for talking with family and friends or neighbors. And then we always have a good selection of newspaper articles that you could click on. So the newsletter, it's free, and I won't spam your inbox with it. That's the website, dpecf.org. If you want to check out the political committee's website, it's hope, 4fl.org. Hope for Florida. If you want to become a member, One of the things we found out traveling around the state and visiting clubs, sometimes like they give like, we're there and they talk business, like we got to do a membership drive and dues are like $35 or I don't even want to ask, what are dues for this club?
25.
25? See, we're a bargain, we're 20. Don't quit this club, but if you want to become a member, it's a $20 membership fee. If you want to sign up for Spectre, we'll send these links around, and I think that's it. So I know we went really fast. There might be questions on HB1, SB202, other current events, or like our plans for 24. It's up to Pat if we have time for questions or.
I hope people might have some.
Okay. So just a couple of questions. So Joan, please.
Yeah. I would like to vote for a pro-public education candidate, so when voting comes up, where do I go to find out who is the pro-public education candidate?
It's a great question. We actually do endorse.
Repeat the question, please.
So the question was, how do you find out who is a pro-public education candidate so that you can vote for that? That's a good question. So our Caucus DPECF does endorse candidates. So that is a good place to look. I also know, I have to say, as a league member, the league does 411, and so they also will have information on your local candidates, so you can look up info on your local candidates as well.
Okay. Could you send out, like, right before election time, a list of those candidates? That would make it much easier.
You are not the first person to ask that, so yes, that is definitely on the list for the next time. Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure you can answer this because I'm not sure legally if you know the answer, but I was listening to the Florida Roundup yesterday, and there was a mother on there whose child goes to New College. And they were talking about how some children just don't fit into big universities. But there, they all feel comfortable, they have their own private academic advisor. If I were a parent and I paid for 3 years of education for my child, and she's in the middle of her 3rd year, and suddenly the whole philosophy flips, what do these parents have? I mean, I hear constantly that this is the state of rights ad nauseum. Well, parental rights, but where are they? I mean, what do parents do in a case like this?
So I went down to the protests that they had, and there were tons of angry parents who were there. And they're protesting, but here's how horrible it is, and I wish I had Wi-Fi. I was there, and Anna Escamani was there, and Carlos Guillermo Smith. And they spoke at the protest, the students who spoke. Like, if you were there and listened to the students, the speakers, you would know that New College is not a failing college. Well, they wouldn't let anyone in the room to talk to the board of trustees. They kept saying that the room was at capacity. Well, Anna Escamani argued her way past the first round of guards. And she got to where the room was, but they wouldn't let her in, but she took a picture. And I posted it to Twitter and Facebook, and I think I put it in the newsletter. So the room was probably 2-3 times this size. But the way they set up the audience, it was like the only part for the audience was like this part. So they had this big empty room, and they said, no, we're at capacity because all the seats are filled. I have a personal friend, a couple in Hillsborough County, whose son is, has some unique,
Challenges.
they're not even challenges. There are people whose minds are unique.
Qualities.
And he was expecting to go to New College, and now that whole plan has been yanked away. And he's had to tour colleges and apply late, and yeah, it's tough.
But parents are up in arms all over. I mean, they're up in arms with the AP exams, they're up in arms with their daughter's rights, for personal medical information. I mean, at some point, I'm reading that parents are thinking of just pulling their kids out and moving. But it's not so easy. I mean,
Right. You know, for underclassmen maybe, but if you're a junior, you're not gonna transfer, and maybe the changes don't happen immediately. But like, I could see a lot of the faculty quitting, a lot of the students quitting, but then they just gave $15 million. So they're gonna pay kids from out of state to come go to New College, right? It's just horrible. So I don't have a good answer. People are angry, but the only way we can change this is at the ballot box. You know, we could be as angry and protest as much as we want, but we gotta start changing things at the ballot box. Okay.
Are there more pros or cons to the legislature's proposed idea of partisan school board elections?
Politics, and this is, I understand the paradox of the president of the Democratic Public Education Caucus saying this, but politics has no place in public education. If you poll on it, 85% of parents want politics out. Now, why do the Republicans want partisan school board races? Because if they do that, you will never elect a Democrat to school board in Sumter or Lake or, you know, a lot of the places. Now, I've heard some Democrats from like Orange County or Broward County saying, well, that's not so bad. We'll own the school board in Orange and Broward. And I think that misses the point. We should get politics out of education. In 2018, we elected all sorts of pro-public education school board members. Liz Anderson, good Democrat, great school board member, was elected in an R+15 district. Well, the governor came in, made it a partisan race, even without making it partisan on the ballot. She lost, she's gone. Sarah Fortney, Polk County, openly lesbian school board member, former science teacher, awesome school board member. They come in, county citizens defending freedom, they make it partisan, and she lost by a couple thousand votes. But she was so well regarded, and that was more of a failing on the Democrat side for that August race. The Democrats only turned out under 30%. NPAs turned out 9.3%. But if he added up the number of all Democrats who showed up to vote, all the NPAs who showed up to vote, Sarah had 2,000 more votes than all the Dems and NPAs put together. But she lost because we didn't turn out to vote, and people turned out because they were told to by, the polarized Moms for Liberty County Citizens Defending Freedom folks. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it also will lead to more extreme school board races. I feel like Orange County was a little bit assailed, so I need to just say that in Orange County, we have 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and 2 NPAs on our school board. We did until this last election, and they were all pro-public education school board members. And I think that by making this partisan, all of a sudden now, those school board members are answerable to party leaders rather than to their communities who elected them and who are focused on public education. I think that's a huge problem. And I think the second big problem with making these races partisan is that it excludes the, I think 26% of NPA voters who now cannot vote in the primary.
Someone had a hand up over here.
No?
Do you endorse, I have a question about the school boards. In Lake County, the Democratic Committee sent out poll cards to people of who the candidates are. Do you endorse people who are not Democrats? We asked people to come to our meeting and explain themselves and what their policies were. If they were pro-public education, we endorsed people who weren't Democrats. Do you do that as well, or do you just endorse people who are registered Democrats?
So this past cycle, all we had was the caucus. And in the caucus bylaws, it says you can't endorse a Republican. You could endorse an MPA if there are no Democrats in the race. And there were a couple of good NPA candidates. We didn't endorse them, but by not endorsing, it was weird. We kind of made clear who we wanted. Now, with the political committee, we kind of deliberately branded the political committee as a help out public education. So let's say it's Lake County and there's no Democrats running, but there's a quote good Republican. Could the caucus endorse? No, but could the political committee come in and that would be where I kind of hide behind the screen and Stephanie with her hope name tag can talk. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't. What I need to have is when we do the poll cards and we tell people these are who we're supporting, that we could say Hope endorses X person, because we have a lot of trouble with city council and school board and judges because we can't really endorse people who are Republicans, and the league doesn't really endorse people, and so people just go, I don't really know, I'm not going to vote.
So you want a Hope slate card?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's something that we can do, and that's, I mean, the way that it's set up, it allows us to do that because it is not partisan or branded with a side, recognizing that different counties have different needs. And
it's hard because we had a lovely Democratic woman who was on the school board. She had kids in the school. It became difficult for her children, for her being on the school board. So it's, it's something that there's so much harassment. So we had a person who was not, say, my first choice if I had an ideal person, but was okay. So, that's where we need some help because people just don't know who to vote for.
yep.
I don't know if Pat's given us the hook or not.
Well, I am. I'm looking at the time, and I'm trying to. Thank you so much. And we can pass on all that contact information to our membership list. So if you're not on our membership list, you become a member, you get on the list, you get all that information. One of the things I wrote at the end is please remember to read your email from DWC because there's a lot of stuff that comes. You'll see Sue sends out tons of really valuable information.
And we'll hang out afterwards. Come talk to us. We'll give you cards and.
Yes. And I don't know, you're going to go to lunch? Maybe you're still thinking. I know you want to see. There's a FDP candidates forum at noon, is it?
Noon.
Yeah. And I don't know if we'd have access to a TV. Like, is there one? Do the rec centers have TV? I never stopped and watched it. Sorry, you can come to my house. Yes.
You might be able to pull it up online
Oh.
and then plug in.
Oh, okay.
And then you can project it here if they'll let you keep
Well,
it rolling.
we're gonna go to lunch. I should have done like box lunches or something. I didn't think of that.
We'll come up another time.
Okay, all right. So there are so many things I thought of when you were doing that, and the big one, and I'll just take 1 minute. My spiel is the sucking away of money from public education. The school districts have to do their budgets, and they do their budgets based on the enrollment that they have. So the kids who are already in private schools, home schools, et cetera, they are not counted in that budget. So the state has allotted a certain amount of money for the school district. Well, when the vouchers come due, the vouchers are taken from that money where those students were never counted. And that causes shortfalls in every one of the districts. And every time I write a letter, every time I send something to one of the legislators that I don't get an answer to, I always say, as a taxpayer, my tax money is paid to support public education. That's what I want to see you doing. So I just wanted to add that, and I won't add the other dozen things.